Welcome to the Boosting Achievement ESL podcast. I am your host, Dr. Carol Salva. In this podcast, I'm chronicling my journey of learning about the best ways to support multilingual learners and the teachers who teach them. This is episode 130. 130. Wow. Well, I'm excited that you joined me. Thank you so much. Before we get started, I want to make sure you know, though, about Voice Ed Radio. You can just type into your address bar voiced.ca. It's education radio 24 hours a day. I'm just grateful to them and excited the podcast is on that network. But wherever you're getting your podcast, you can get this podcast anywhere you get podcasts. And I appreciate you and the platform you're using. I appreciate it. So today is such an important episode. I'm so glad you're here. It's more important than ever that we have things, practical things for supporting students from hard places. Trauma-informed instruction can be a mystery for a lot of us, but we know that we need to be delivering instruction and working with students in a way that supports students who have gone through or are going through difficult things right now. So my guest is such an important voice in the field for that. You are going to walk away from this podcast episode with things you can use immediately, practical things you could use tomorrow. I love that my guest, Elise White Diaz, agreed to come on and share with us. She is a colleague of mine. You're going to hear us talking about that. We're very close. We're both on the newcomer team for Sidelets Education, and her book came out recently. It's called Discover, Connect, Respond, a practical approach to trauma-informed instruction. Oh my gosh, this book is just blown up. The training that she offers is something, it's such a heavy topic, but you leave just so determined that you're armed with practical things you can use right away. So you're going to get her top tips today in today's episode. You're going to learn more about Elise. I just want to make sure you know how to follow her and how to get the show notes for today. All the links are always in the same place. They are at this short link, bit.ly/BA podcast, all in capital letters. And you're looking for episode 130. All right, let's jump right into this episode with author, trainer, and consultant, Elise White Diaz. Let's go. Elise White Diaz, welcome to the Boosting Achievement ESL podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm going to try to act like we're not besties and that we're just having a professional Zoom right now, if that's okay.
It's gonna be the hardest thing for me too. Let's just let go of that. We just need to tell people. We just need to tell people. And that is, I'm just gonna barely introduce you because I want you to tell more about yourself. But I'm so excited because you're the author of this new beautiful, beautiful book that I'm holding here. If anybody is watching the YouTube version of the show, I have a beautiful copy of Discover, Connect, Respond, a practical approach to trauma-informed instruction. And the world has been waiting for this book. We need it. We need it so much. Elise is the author of the book, and she's also a very powerful keynote speaker, trainer, instructional coach. Elise works for Sidelets Education. We are on the newcomer team together. And what else? She's one of my favorite people in the world.
Oh.
Tell us more about yourself. How did you get into supporting multilingual learners? What's your backstory? Where would you begin?
Well, since I'm talking to you, I have to say that I remember when I first heard about you that, yes, that I went to a conference or something and from John Seidlitz.
Oh,
And yeah, at the break, and this was many, many years ago, of course. At the break, I ran up to him and I said, John, what do you have for trauma-informed multilingual education? And he said, check out Dr. Carol Salva. And so I did. And I was like, wow, she gives everything away. She's got
Ah!
lesson plans. She's got so many resources, all these Padlets. And so when I first met you in person, Tess, it was just a dream come true. So I've learned so much from you, and I want to thank you for that before beginning to talk about my story.
Oh my gosh. I just love that so much because I can remember sitting in your session and I was sitting with John and I was like, this is it. He's like, I told you. I told you. I love that John Seidlitz wrote the foreword for your book. It's such a moving,
Yeah.
wonderful forward and testament. And he says that. He says he was waiting for something like this to come along, that he remembered being at a Seven Steps training in El Paso and teachers who were serving students from the other side of the border and back and forth. And they loved the language rich classroom, approach, but they wanted more. They wanted a way to support their students that were coming from hard places. But by the time you met John Seidlitz, you'd been deep in your research and practice of trauma-informed instruction. So tell us more about your journey to that.
Yeah, well, I've had my foot kind of in two worlds for maybe about 20 years, and both in the education world and in the nonprofit world. And so maybe about 17 years ago, I was living in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, and I was teaching children who were garbage scavengers in a garbage dump. And so all throughout the developing world, there are these communities that form around the garbage dump. And it was a very challenging environment, as you can imagine, because the average education there was third grade, and there was a lot of pressure to not go to school because children were wage earners for their families. So there was a lot of pressure to be outside of school. There was already generate people were in there for generations. You know, grandparents working with their children and great grandchildren and just stuck in there. And so, in this particular environment, kids were able to get a vision for education and go on to college. And we had to find ways to work across cultural barriers because the majority of teachers in that setting, they lived kind of one step up from garbage picking. And here I come in, an American, my Spanish is okay, but it doesn't sound like Honduran Spanish. And how do we cross cultural barriers to make deep connections with kids and help them to get a vision for education and meet their holistic needs? That was a big focus of the project as well because we found that we had to open up a health clinic. And we did family visits, we connected with a social worker, and so many different things, right? Really meeting their holistic needs. So I was serving down there for about 5 years, and we moved back to the United States to the North Texas area. And I was working in an under-resourced middle school there. And interestingly, so many of the students in the United States had the same issues of the kids in Honduras. And I was befuddled that the things that seemed so horrible to me were in my backyard. Like there was actually trafficking that was happening. There was child labor in the United States.
Yeah.
And then I know, and all the different types of abuse, right? And so it was just like all of us are, all hands on deck, trying to meet all the needs of the community, starting mentorship programs, just doing everything we can to meet the communities and the students' needs. And at the same time, my husband and I have been continued with being involved in the orphan and foster care movement. So I was going to conferences and learning about interventions for kids who come from hard places, who come from trauma affected backgrounds. And so when I saw kids dysregulated in the public school, like emotionally dysregulated, and I didn't know if they came from trauma impacted backgrounds, but I'm like, let's just try some of these interventions. And so I was trying to apply what I was learning from the conferences and the reading, and finding that I needed to make very specific, actionable things that could be done when you are walking with the kid down the hall and he is throwing a desk and he's so angry. Like, how do we help him to calm down? And so these were different things that I was just trying and applying and figuring things out and reading. And um, at the point that I met John, I remember the principal called me into her office. She said, "Hey, Elise, I've got good news for you." And she said, "Hey, your multilingual learners went from 16% to 67% on the state reading assessment."
My goodness.
I know.
Oh my goodness. And these are students that when you got them at the beginning of the year, they probably had so many strikes against them, that
Yes.
population that's at risk, and like you said, 16% of them, of your students, were meeting state expectations when you got them.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that you said that struck me was that when you were back in Honduras working with these students that were older, but the average reading was, they were like at a second or third grade level for literacy. Did I understand that right?
Well, yes, that is also true. But the average education level in that community was third grade, meaning that they would drop out of school after third
Oh,
grade.
oh. And what you said was some of those students, you with this project ended up seeing that they were eventually were on a track for going to college. You got to see these
Yes.
kids go to college.
Yeah, they went to college.
And so, and it feels like, it sounds like you're saying, it feels like, okay, so that's in a third world, the other kind of world outside of the United States. We're so fortunate back here to have what we have, but you found that in your own backyard, you were
Hmm.
having the same kinds of issues.
Yes.
And in one school year, you saw dramatic growth.
Hmm.
So tell us more. So your principal was excited. I'm sure you were excited.
Yeah. And these were kids that I had walked with from sixth grade. I had them in my own classroom in seventh grade. And then in eighth grade, we had moved into kind of a co-teaching model. And so I took that cohort that I had been walking with, and that was the specific cohort that really just threw the numbers like out the window, like did so amazing. And I remember my principal asked me, she's like, "Elise, how did this happen?" And I said, "I don't know." And this, I didn't recognize what was happening yet.
Oh,
And then,
wow.
yeah, and then I went to another school that was a completely different demographic. And trauma was there as well. And interestingly, I believed in this approach that I was doing so much. I remember that I told the junior education teachers as we started to do remediations for our state assessment for STAR, I said, "Give me the kids that you don't think will pass the STAR. And they're not even multilingual learners, just give me all of those kids." And they said, "Elise, you want them all at once, all at the same time?" I said, "Yeah, just give them to me in tutorial sessions." And I had to preface it. I'm like, I don't think I could actually get them to pass. That was a lie. I did, and I did think that, but I had to say that because they were staring at me like I was crazy.
You had to
And
be like, yeah, yeah, I'm not crazy. It's not like I'm going to get
yeah,
a pass or anything.
I know. But it wasn't me. It's just this very simple routine. And it was interesting because the students that showed up into my door, I've never seen them before. They were all culturally and linguistically diverse students.
Wow.
Yeah. And so just taking them through this Discover, Connect, Respond routine, every single one of them passed the state assessment.
You're talking about reading?
Reading, yes, reading.
My goodness.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're saying is it really came back to the same routine you were working
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and which has become the foundation of your resource, Discover, Connect, Respond, is
Yes.
is what you were doing.
Yes.
I need to break in and tell you again how to get the show notes. They are at the short link. Just type all in capital letters bit.ly/BA podcast. And you're looking for episode 138. There you're going to find links on how to follow Elise and other podcasts she's done and other resources, blog posts, and different things that she puts out in the community that we've all been learning from. So you can get quite a lot about Discover, Connect, Respond. It's such an education just following you on Twitter or following you, well, X now, or in the different social media places where you are. So, what if you could give us just in a podcast like this, just a level overview? I want people to know that the training that you give, that is either a full day or a half day training, and I know you follow that up with coaching and mentoring and modeling, that has been super popular, super well received. I was in Bastrop, Texas, and I was just fortunate to be there the day after you did the full day training, and they were still raving.
Oh.
Everybody,
Mm-hmm.
it was so hopeful. Because
Mm-hmm.
we need that. We can talk more about that, but we need this kind of thing where educators feel the opposite of burnout when they're working with a challenging population. So anyway, if somebody were in the elevator and
Yeah.
said, "Oh my God, you're Elise Diaz. I heard about DCR, hashtag DCR teaching. Tell me the elevator speech about it."
Sure, sure. So the process, the intervention of discover, connect, respond is based off of attachment science and the attachment cycle that happens between a caregiver and an infant in psychological theory. And so this is something that when I describe, all of us will be familiar with it. So when there is a baby and the baby experiences a need, perhaps the baby has a soiled diaper, the baby will cry to express their need, and the caregiver will hear the cry and then discover why is the baby crying, right? What are they trying to express through their emotional dysregulation? So they hear the baby crying and then they pick the baby up close and they connect with it. And that is when they meet the felt needs, they respond to it, they change the baby's diaper and they soothe the baby and then they can put the baby back to sleep, right?
Okay.
So this is the attachment cycle, and this is what builds our brain, helps to build language as well. And when this is done in a good enough manner, children experience extreme amounts of like language growth and relational development and brain development. However, when a child does not have experience their needs being met consistently and attentively, because sometimes there's a mix match, right? Where the parents can't read the child, they don't know how to respond to their needs. Maybe they came from a hard place themselves. So if that happens, then they experience a sort of like a, I mean, there's four different attachment styles, but we're not going to get into that too much. But it is interestingly, this, I'm going to kind of geek out on this a little bit, if that's okay with you. This is not in the book. This is just, I'm always researching this.
Yes,
So,
yes.
Dr. Alan Shore, he talked about so many of the mental health challenges that people experience begin with attachment. And so, if attachment is not done good enough, that's when people have mental health challenges down the road, right?
Mm.
But the most beautiful thing about this is that the brain structures that build attachment remain pliable or changeable throughout life. And
Wow.
they've done research that a secondary caregiver, such as a teacher, can help students rewire their brains for healthy attachment and heal all that has been done in the past.
Oh, that's amazing.
Hmm.
I've heard, one caring adult is, it can make a huge difference. I don't know
Hmm.
the science behind it like you're explaining, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So when we're looking for, but when we're feeling overwhelmed and we're feeling like, oh, this student, how am I going to help this student? They have so many things going on. What you're teaching us here is that we need to recognize that relationship and connection
Hmm.
with the student not only is important, it could be everything. It could be super transformative. It can make all
Yes.
the difference for this child.
Yes, exactly. And let me give you a very specific, concrete example about what this looks like in a classroom, right?
Okay.
Because it sounds very abstract right now. So, taking it back to those tutorials for the state assessment. One little boy named Khalid. First we want to discover what is his story? What is his story as a student? What is the story he's telling himself? And we do a data dive on him and we find out that he's never passed any state assessments, but he has a very high Lexile level.
Hmm.
He's a very proficient reader. So that's interesting, right? Why
Hmm.
would he not pass the state assessments but be such a prolific reader? And
Hmm.
so then we're going to connect with him and build trust with him across culture. And so many teachers are so good at doing this, but we're going to get curious and have ways for him to tell us his story. And so just asking him, Khalid, what happens to you when you take that state assessment? And he says, "Oh, miss, I get nervous, right?" And so now we're going to meet his emotional needs, his dysregulation needs. And instead of trying to cram him full of tons of information and remediation on the STAR test, the state assessment. And so it's simply explaining to him and providing tools for him. So I love Dr. Dan Siegel's metaphor for the brain as a two-story building. And he says that we have a downstairs brain and an upstairs brain. And when our downstairs brain gets full of water, when it gets flooded, and that is symbolic of stress and anxiety and frustration, those emotions, when we feel flooded with emotions, it's hard for us to climb up the stairs to our upstairs brain where logic and learning and language happen, right?
Ah,
Yeah, and we've probably experienced this before, where we've got bad news and we just feel kind of frozen, like we can't process, we can't express language. And so what we have to do is we have to provide ways for students to take out the water from their downstairs brain so they could climb up to their upstairs brain. And so it's about coaching Khalid. Hey, if you start feeling nervous on that state assessment, let's give you some tools to help regulate yourself. Like, do you want to? And these usually involve moving, grounding, or breathing.
mm,
Do you want to go take a walk and go get a drink of water, right? What's the narrative that you're telling yourself as you're taking this test? Is it that you saw everybody finish early? That's probably going to happen, colleague, but that's not going to be you. You're going to keep going, right? And you're going to tell yourself a narrative that they finished early, but I'm going to pass this. And
yeah.
so, yeah, just like you do with your students.
It's
And then so you coach him, you provide the tools, and then you respond by helping him know how to navigate the feelings of anxiety, and then he passes the state assessment.
yeah. Yeah, we see it over and over again. Our brains are so powerful and they are adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even as adults, even if you didn't go through trauma yourself, you can think about a time where just like you just said, I just brought back an emotion for me when my dad passed away a few years back. I remember this period of time where I couldn't function
Mm-hmm.
immediately after that within my right mind. And you you can do things to help yourself through that.
Mm-hmm.
It makes all the difference. So
Yeah.
you're actually offering a young person, but that connection and that respond, I
Mm-hmm.
guess it depends on what you're discovering. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that is something that I love about this resource is, and the way that you train is that you're actually helping educators spot these things and see practical ways when you have a class full of students to identify, okay, here's where I need to make a conscious decision
Mm-hmm.
about what I'm going to do. And if this, then I should see the child de-escalating first. Like you just give us a pattern of what to
Mm-hmm.
look for.
Yeah. Can I mention the four S's routine too?
Please, please, I
Okay.
think that would be helpful.
Okay, so this is one of the tools under the connection piece. Each different step has different tools under it. But this tool, the purpose of it, it is a formula for emotional attunement. And the reason for this is because some people just attune naturally. They're empathetic, they can read other people well and sense their emotions and match their energy. Like I noticed that you could do that very well, Carol.
Hmm. Good.
Yeah, but some people are not natural attuners, like my husband, for example, who
Ah.
is not going to listen to this podcast, I don't think. And so, um, and so those when people don't aren't natural attuners, they need a routine in place as well.
Yeah.
Because when students, they might be with one teacher that's a natural attuner, but then the rest of their classroom day, they might go through their day feeling invisible. And so here is the routine. It stands for, in fact, I'm going to kind of gesture it for us, if that's okay.
Sure.
So, and this helps us remember. It's a physical cue for us to help us remember. So it's see, sounds like, suggest, support.
Okay, I'm going to tell people because so many people in our audience are just listening.
Okay.
When you said see, you tapped right by your eyes, like by your
Mm-hmm.
temples, and then listen, and you put your hand right behind your ear, like
Sounds like. Mm-hmm.
sounds like. So see sounds like,
Mm-hmm.
suggest, and you did the talking hand like
Uh-huh.
talking, and then support, and you held up your hand like you're holding something up. So
Mm-hmm.
imagine that. And again, everybody, there is a YouTube version to this show, and the link is in the show notes. So, one more reminder, you can get today's show notes at the short link bit.ly/BA podcast, all in capital letters. You're looking for episode 130, and you can get all the links. All right, let's go back to the show. So tell us more. That those kinds of response signals or physical response does help us remember. See, sounds like, suggests support. Okay, tell
Mm-hmm.
us more about it.
Okay, so C sounds like are the beginning of sentence stems for the teacher. And then suggest and support are what the teacher does.
Ah,
So it looks like this. So imagine there is a kid in your class who's sitting with his head down on the desk and he's checked out, right? Everybody else is working, but he's got his head down.
hmm,
And so many of us naturally we want to go up to like, hey, what's going on? You know? But some of us, maybe our natural tendency is just to react, be like, get to work, right?
yes.
And so this one reminds us to pause and come to the student and say, I see that your head is on the desk.
So you're just saying what you see.
Exactly.
Got it.
The reason for this is so that we don't accidentally make an assumption,
Oh,
right?
yes. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I heard you say this before, and it did
Mm-hmm.
stick with me because everyone can do this. Everyone can just see. I mean, everyone can just say what they see. And that
Mm-hmm.
gives us a moment to pause and just call that out, what you see.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect.
Yes. So I see that your head is on the desk. What's going on? Right? Are you okay? Is it, tell me, right? And so then maybe the student will say a little bit depending on their language proficiency level. Sometimes I will do this with Google Translate if it's with a student who's just come into the country and that's at the beginning stages of language production.
Yes.
But let's say they're at maybe they have those basic interpersonal communication skills. So they say, "Oh, I'm so tired because my parents were fighting last night." Right? And so now the teacher has information. Oh, it's not that he was gaming all night as I thought he was, or it's not that he doesn't want to work. He's just physically tired, right? And probably there's some other emotions going on if parents are out fighting all night.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, so I see that. Now, after the student has talked and said a little bit about what's going on, the next sentence stem is, it sounds like.
It sounds like.
And for this one, we just repeat verbatim what the student says. It sounds like you're tired because your parents were up fighting all night. Is that right?
So you're
Mm-hmm.
not rephrasing, you're
Mm-mm.
not inferring or concluding anything. You are
Mm-mm.
repeating back what they said to you in that sentence, it sounds like.
Yep, repeating verbatim. And the reason for these two stems is because it helps students to feel seen and heard.
Ah, seen and
Uh-huh.
heard. Yeah.
Mhm. And this is already starting to regulate their nervous systems.
God.
And yeah, and it's crazy because so often kids especially don't experience this. Adults come at them with ideas and assumptions and reactions. You do this, right? I just did this with a little girl the other day, and just after the two S's, she goes, because she was so, it was such a like a natural reaction of, wow, I just feel so understood right now. And so, yeah, those are the first two S's, okay? C
Yeah.
sounds like.
I wonder if people like me are making connections to just hard conversations you have with other adults. Like how much better off we would all be if I just stopped, if we were having a hard conversation. Now I'm thinking of my husband. But but really, if you just stop and say, I see that, whatever, like I see that you're upset. Um, and tell me about it. And then it sounds like, and then just verbatim, just to give the other person an opportunity instead of what we do, which is, or what I do, which is listen to respond. You're at that point, you're truly trying to listen to understand.
Hmm.
Everyone can do that. You've given us some really nice tools for that first couple steps. So
Yeah.
C sounds
Hmm.
like, and
Yeah.
the,
And just to what you mentioned is I started using this with everybody too, by the way, in coaching,
ah,
because people will come to us when we coach them and they're dysregulated, right?
yeah,
And so we already know this. But they're just a really helpful tool that I find for myself to help me remember just to not jump in and create that space, right?
yes.
Okay. Yes. So C sounds like, and then it's suggest. And so what we're doing for suggesting is here is where we can suggest an emotion word. Like, are you feeling overwhelmed? Are you feeling frustrated? And give them some other options. Do any of those stick? Do any of those resonate? And the reason that we're doing this is because that Dr. Dan Siegel says if we can name it, then we can tame it.
Oh, good. That's so
Hmm. Hmm. And so simply helping people to understand that you're experiencing anxiety helps to diffuse the anxiety.
huh.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
sounds it sounds very much like you're experiencing this versus you are this. That whole, well, these kids are this and these kids, no, these kids are experiencing this. Like you said, name what it is will help. That's got to be the first step. Yeah, that makes so much
Hmm.
sense.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's suggesting that emotion word, and this is especially crucial for students who come from hard places because they often will come with a limited emotional vocabulary.
Oh,
Yeah, and they might only know the words mad, sad, happy, or hungry.
especially if they're language learners too.
Hmm.
It's not
Exactly.
just about language learners, of course. So you're
So we're
also helping.
suggesting a motion word, and they might not land, depending on what age they are. I was asking my 17-year-old son about this. I'm like, hey, if a teacher showed up for you this way, like, how would you respond? He's like, I don't want to say anything at all. I'd keep it in, but then I would walk out and I would think, maybe I am frustrated. Maybe I am overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So it's just providing that word to give students thinking space about it, right? And
Hmm.
then the last S is support. And it's simply asking, how can I help? So the student is solving their own problem and telling you how to support them, as opposed to the teacher coming in and saying, Jimmy, I see you're mad. So here's what I want you to do. You know?
Yeah, there's a chair over there, the cool down chair. You can go sit over there and then come back when you're
Yeah.
ready for it. And
Yeah.
which may work in some things, but this routine, it gives so much more. It just gives so much more. I think for the teachers, it gives me a place to start where I feel like I can at least with clarity, I can, it feels like it would be helpful so that I don't get dysregulated by
Mm-hmm.
education because I will take on the anxiety of other people. And so we're just living in a time right now where we all need more ways to lower our stress
Yeah.
about a lot of things. So
Yeah.
especially when a student is going through an episode of something.
Yeah, and you're so right too that um, as first responders and primary caregivers of these students, that they're and it's natural. If we see them where they're having explosive emotions, that can trigger us, and
Yes.
then emotion is contagious. So when we go into the red zone, they get even further in the red zone, and so we need to have ways to take a step back and make sure that we're regulated first
Yeah.
before we offer and lend our calm to our students.
And lend our calm. That you've said that, I've heard you say that, and I think about that. That if I just like someone can make me more anxious, someone could help me be more
Hmm.
calm
Yeah.
by their energy and by how they're receiving me, and vice versa. It's just lend someone your calm, or the opposite might be what you're lending. We don't want that. So, this show, all of the episodes are about our new arrival students. Your work is way beyond new arrival students or multilingual learners. You know, um, the world is just, we just keep hearing this every year. It seems like more than ever, we say we need we need to think about the social emotional well-being of the students and ourselves.
Hmm.
Honestly, Elise, right now, when we see so many families in distress and nervous and scared, and the children going through that as well, and the educators and communities that care about our students, I think this is so important. It does give us so much hope. I've said on the last few episodes that I feel that we're in the middle of a time in history where we are creating more students with interrupted education than we have. And we were already seeing such an explosion because of what was happening around the world, where students would be out of formal education for a while. And I just know that we're going to continue to see this need, and it's just going to be
Hmm.
more and more. It's going to be so imperative. It's already so imperative that educators have in their tool belt practical ways to support students that are going through hard things.
Hmm. And yeah, and just to kind of tag off what you're saying about creating more students with limited interrupted formal education, the mental health is described as many as an epidemic right now among youth. And so if a child or a teenager has, and I know as I'm speaking about this, that it has touched all of us, that it's too widespread to not be personal for us, and
Yes.
to happen to people that we care for deeply. But when students go into crisis and mental health crisis, that also causes interrupted and limited formal education because then they have to leave school and go into like a special center and so many different things. So yeah, all of these issues are very overlapping right now.
Yeah. And and then if you take all of the English learners and at-risk students and students that you would think of, that would be going through things like this. If you remove them for a moment out of the classroom and you're left with students that seemingly don't have those issues, there's still a significant number of those students that we don't know what's going on in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And just the day to day of being a young person. There's so many challenges. So I'm super grateful for the book and for the resource because I feel like it adds so much. I feel like all new teachers should have it, all veteran teachers should have it. I've
Mm-hmm.
learned so much from it. I keep rereading parts of it because it's just such a good addition to the field. Very, very important in the multilingual learner space, very, very important in the newcomer space, and really way beyond that, way beyond. So the
Mm.
last thing I'm going to ask you about, of course, you can talk, we could talk all day, and I love it. But the last thing I'm going to ask you about is this really beautiful cover. And there is an image on the cover. It's so beautiful. Can you describe it to folks, the hands, and we'll just describe to folks what this is on the cover, especially for folks who can't see the cover.
Okay, sure, yeah. So I have this is a bowl, and it's kintsugi pottery, which is a Japanese pottery form. If you're deep into trauma-informed education, you probably know what this is.
Oh,
And yeah, yeah. And so in this kintsugi pottery form, what they would do is they would take broken pottery and they would weld it back together with gold so that it is even more beautiful in its brokenness.
oh,
Yeah. And so in this pottery, I'm holding it on the cover to represent the teacher who's holding the student who is beautiful in their brokenness. Or maybe, Carol, the bull is us and we are being held.
oh.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's so, so beautiful. The cover is so beautiful. The bowl is beautiful. It's a silence education resource, and everybody
Hmm.
knows that our publishing team it
Yeah.
just works with our authors to create the most beautiful resources and just user friendly. You can flip through, and it's written in such a user friendly um, layout, and our resources are so popular for that.
Yeah. Can I mention one more thing about resilience if we have time?
Yes, we do have time.
Okay, excellent. So I wanted to mention the idea of resilience, which I'm sure you also love resilience. It go overlaps a lot with your work. And some of the research out there, we've all heard about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, those hard things that the more that you have, the worst health outcomes you have, which is hard news to hear, right?
Yeah.
Well, they've done research that positive school experiences, like many of your students have experienced in your classroom, can kind of erase those adverse childhood experiences, and students can emerge resilient
Oh
in
gosh.
spite of all of these hard things. And when you think about our leaders in society, so many of them have come from hard places. Some of the people you've had on this podcast as well, and they've emerged resilient. So there is so much good news around trauma, even though it's a hard word to swallow. So I just wanted to leave listeners with that.
Yes, there's always hope. And,
Hmm.
and educators and other people that come into contact with these students can be the difference that can set them on the path to becoming a resilient leader, not just,
Yes.
not just getting past their hard history, but actually making a big impact in the world, they themselves. And we see it happen over and over again. So I love that you've given us this tool that we can feel confident in
Mhm.
how to support and know that we're looking at a long game here. We're looking in the future, and there's always hope. There's,
Yeah, that's exactly right.
yeah. Thank you so much, Elise. Thank you for coming on this show and sharing with us. I want to ask you to please take a minute to tell people where can they get more Elise White Diaz.
Sure. Well, of course, on Silence Education's website, you could purchase the book there or purchase it through Amazon. And there's also trainings available. There's actually four different trainings right now that go along with this book.
Okay.
Um, and so there's trainings that go with the book. There's 3 hour, there's full day trainings, there's coaching and mentoring, as you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And yeah, and then I have a blog site too, elisewhitediaz.com.
EliseWhiteDiaz.com is you get all things Elise. And the name of the book again is Discover, Connect, Respond, a practical approach to trauma-informed instruction. We're just so grateful that you added it to the world. We're so grateful, and just like a lot of our colleagues and clients are so grateful that you're available to support them in their schools, in their classrooms with real kids. It's just so inspiring, your work, and it's such an honor for me to get to work with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Carol.
Thank you so much for being here. Okay, well, we'll all be following you. Thank you so much, Elise. We're going to say
Thanks.
bye.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye-bye. See, didn't I tell you it was going to be a really important episode? I just appreciate Elise so much. She has such practical ideas. She has a book full of practical ideas. If you have not had the training, oh my goodness, if you get an opportunity, do not miss the opportunity to attend the training. And if you can send her information to the folks in your district who are hiring folks for professional development, it's very well received. Teachers appreciate a half day or a full day of training from Elise on helping some of our most marginalized students. It's a heavy topic, but you leave feeling lighter. You leave like ready to roll up your sleeves and get right back into the classroom because it's empowering. These kinds of things are what we need. So at least, if nothing else, follow Elise on social media. I know she's on Facebook and on Instagram. I just appreciate all that she shares for free if you follow her. And if I haven't said it enough, you can find today's show notes at the short link, bit.ly/BA podcast, all in capital letters. And you're looking for episode 130. That's where you'll find all the links on how to follow Elise and me and how to connect with us. And yeah, I'm just going to end by saying thank you. Thank you for helping my learning. Thank you for being here. If you are still listening, you are such an education hero to me. And it's such an extreme honor to have spent this time with you. Thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing. Please reach out. I'd love to connect. Okay. Take good care. Bye-bye.